Hi everyone, my name is Dhriti Kumar and I'm the founder of Environment Medicine. I'm the host today for today's podcast episode. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Franklin. Dr. Franklin is a postdoctoral research associate at the Silent Spring Institute. She is an analytical chemist who studies environmental exposures risks from beauty products. Her research shines light on chemical exposure injustices among women based on race, education, and other factors. Dr. Franklin, could you please share a little bit more on your research area?
Yeah, so I'm fresh out of a panel where I was chatting with some folks about what my work is on. So we were focused and the panel was on the social determinants of health. And so I say, like, when you think about social determinants of health, right, that means anything that is non-medical or non-genetic that that leads to health outcomes. So when I think about my work, like, I focus a lot on our exposures to the products that we use because of social expectations is the best way to describe it. And so I do a lot of evaluating of the products that we use and why, and more so try to understand why we use them as well. And so when I think about a few of my projects that I'm doing now, it's evaluation of hair products and cosmetics, so to say. So understanding the chemicals that, for instance, are in hair extensions. You don't think about that. When you go and purchase hair extensions, you just purchase them and you put it on, similar to like clothing, right? You don't think about chemicals when you think about the clothing that you put on. I mean, there was this one time though, I like ordered a bodysuit. It was like a cat suit. Like, ordered this cat suit from Amazon, and it smelled like chemicals. And I just thought to myself, I'm not putting that on. So I went and I washed it. I pulled it out the dryer, and it still had this very strong smell.
Oh my
I did not wear it because I could only imagine what it was. But yeah, when I think
goodness.
about the work that I'm well, the work that I'm doing mainly focuses on that. Like, how do beauty products, what are the chemicals that we're exposed to from beauty products, and why do we choose to use those beauty products as well? So it's like the chemical side, but then also the more social. So I have like both, I'm on both ends, right? I'm on the natural science or the, chemistry, but then also the social science as well, which makes it a lot of fun being kind of interdisciplinary as an individual, and being able to work with so many different folks and who are in such different areas of work.
Yeah, that's really cool actually. And I think it's really interesting that you brought up like hair extensions and clothes whenever it comes to interacting with chemicals, because what I was thinking, like chemicals, I would think like curling gels, straightening like products and stuff that we put. But it's really interesting that, it's the like physical materials. Um you can also interact chemicals just by like touching them and, interacting with them.
And I do that as well. I actually, my work also, we do product testing for hair products, hair straighteners, hair creams, sprays, eyelash glue, um, things like that too. But the one that people don't really think about are usually the textiles, or I actually don't know how to classify hair extensions because are they a textile? Are they a cosmetic? I have no clue. It's like the wild wild west right now, which is like why more work needs to go in evaluating this. Is very little work that has been done to understand what are some potential exposures from hair extensions, and that's just simply because I think it's not something folks think about. There's a certain, I don't know who typically is who are using hair extensions. I could tell you in my community, I'm a Black woman, can't tell, Black women wear hair extensions. Just that, like if you get braids are a very cultural thing, and it's something that we do often. I remember being a kid, and my mom would give me I had to get braids from this lady, and when I say the braid, like she would braid my hair so tight that I would feel like my scalp is about to explode. But when she braided it, she would add a little hair extensions to the braids just to make it all stay together. And so these are things that we're being exposed to at any age. These are, any chemicals that are in hair extensions, you're getting exposed even at childhood. So even maybe before a kid is relaxing their hair, which I think I got my first relaxer at 4, so maybe not me as an example, but folks feel very comfortable putting hair extensions or synthetic hair in kids' hair very early. So, and we want to just better understand what our potential chemical exposures that we're maybe entering the body. And you have different ways of those chemicals getting into your body, so they can absorb dermally, breathe them in, orally. You're talking kids, they might put the hair in their mouths. So we just want to make sure we have a good idea of what's potentially coming in all avenues, just so we can be more aware and make more informed decisions, maybe for policy change, maybe for just so folks can know and make decisions about what is a good or bad, I put air quotes, good or bad product.
Yeah, yeah. And you did bring up like your work focusing on women of color, particularly Black women. So I like how you incorporate such like social and cultural influences whenever you do your work. Um, can you talk more about how like this more interdisciplinary approach affects your work and your research?
Yes, I think it's personal for me. Like, I grew up living in La La Land. Like, I was in high school, and what we would do is like walk around with body sprays, like I won't name any brands, but the brands exist today, but they have these body sprays, and everyone had their own little scent, and we would spray it on our bodies all day, all day, all day, all day. And you just don't think about it. Like it was part of an expectation as a girl in high school, right? And so when I grew up, and like I found out like, hey, they tested these products and they found XYZ in them. And this is, there are different chemicals or more higher concentrations of certain chemicals in products that are used by or marketed to Black women. It's something you think about and you kind of know, but when you see the science in writing, it really changes your perspective on like, this is really, eye-opening. And I guess like it got to a point in my career, I was in a transitional period where I was writing my dissertation. I started this podcast and I needed a topic to talk about. And so I covered that. So, hey, there's this paper published, I think 2018, that found that there are these toxic chemicals in asthma related chemicals that are in products used by Black women. And in that, I started thinking more about how I can help contribute to that science. And so I just I went and applied for the organization that did the work. And that is how I ended up at Silent Spring, was seeing the work that they were doing relative to like consumer product chemical exposures, applied for the job and got it. But it was just because like, for me, I wanted to be involved in getting us to a solution. And so I do understand that like certain habits or certain things that we do are just part of the culture, but part of like my culture and things that we want to do just because it's an expectation. Like we think about smelling good. That is like in probably like a very strong desire for a lot of people to smell good. But
Mhm.
are there ways for us to want to smell like a fruit or an apple, whatever, like a cherry blossom, right? Is there a way for us to do it in a way that can be helpful, or like not, it doesn't work against our health? And those are things that I don't know that we know yet, but I definitely know that I want to maybe help us understand what are safer, maybe alternatives to some of the habits that we have.
Yeah, for sure. And I would definitely agree with, the social pressures that a lot of us tend to face. I think for me, just growing up, um, I haven't really liked my curly hair much. Um, Over time, I have grown to like it a little bit more, but as a young girl, I often saw it as a burden because, I wouldn't really take care of it properly. I would start brushing it out and, it would just become like this huge frizz ball. So, um, I do understand exactly where you're coming from whenever it comes to like the social pressures and how we are kind of forced into using certain products and stuff like that.
And even when you think about hair, for instance, you mentioned your curly hair. Even when you have curly hair, it's an expectation, to your point, that if you're going to wear curly hair, it has to be a certain type of
Mhm.
curl. Frizzy curl is not okay, but the
Yeah.
defined curl is good. So what does that mean? What do you need to define your curls? Now you need what you mentioned earlier, the curling cream, and
Mhm.
then some type of gel to make sure it holds, rather than like, I just want to wash my hair and condition it, and it just like is what it is. No. So social pressures of having the perfect curl, and if it's not and it's frizzy, that's that's not acceptable, or or so
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah. It doesn't quite match the beauty standard, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you also do a lot of work in like translating research and science. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences doing that?
Yeah, so there are a few active things and things that we want to bring back. But so when I was in graduate school, I realized that there was a lack in science communication that focused on educating Black women about just some things that may be helpful for influencing better decision making when it relates to health. And so there's a lack to me in science communication, and then a lot of the science is are behind paywalls. And so if you do want to access the science, sometimes it's just not accessible if you are not associated with some type of organization or institution or college. So I wanted to create a solution to that, and that was so I started a podcast called The Research Heard that focused on science communication for Black women, with a focus on health and with health helping with improving on health. Um, I don't know why that tied my tongue.
Yeah.
um, and that led to me again finding Silent Spring through
Mhm.
the work that through their work that they did, that I ended up talking about on my podcast, later applying. And now some of the work that I do in translation is working with social media influencers to educate their audiences about toxic chemicals and consumer products. So we've I've pretty much done 2 campaigns at this point, where we worked with influencers, help them, or they help us by creating content that is scientifically accurate, but also relatable content. So we've reached over 100,000 unique accounts with this campaign, and been able to get some pretty good insight into the people that folks want to hear from, as far as with science related to toxic chemicals and consumer products, but also um, we are reaching a different audience, which that we haven't as an organization reached before. So yes, I'd say we reached a very diverse audience of Black women using social media, rather than like, workshops. Because when you do a workshop, it's only a limited amount of people that can come. you're going to only reach the people that are in that area. So social media just allows you to be more widespread and reach people in a more broad, context.
It's also really important to educate the community because, when they're armed with the right information, they can make better choices and, use their kind of buyer power to um, invest more into the companies that are prioritizing their health
Yep.
over profit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And so, speaking about the public, what are some changes you would like to see when it comes to environmental health policies to better protect people and consumers?
Yeah. So there is very little protection as it pertains to consumer product chemicals and reducing our exposure through like policies that help reduce our exposure. I'd love to just see maybe the organizations that be so the FDA, who are the regulatory authorities for cosmetics, to be more involved in making sure these products do not have any chemicals that are harmful to our health. Right now, the way that the system is, and the way that our I guess the regulatory system is for determining if chemicals are unsafe for human use is similar to our justice system, which is innocent until proven guilty. And I think that with the fact that there are hundreds of chemicals that are being introduced into the manufacturing each year, so now we have tens of thousands of chemicals that are available for use in products. We need to be more intentional about making sure that those mixes and those mixes of chemicals are, safe for us. And that way, it's not that we are putting it out there, then people are getting sick and then we're taking it back. But more so, okay, we have a very strict criteria that needs to happen in order for your chemical to be put out there. And so if I personally would just love to see more authoritative action taken to make sure we aren't just putting new chemicals out into our environment, out there into the world without more intention. It's I'm not going to say very easy, but chemists there are whole PhD programs where tens of students per PhD program, so hundreds of students worldwide are aiming to synthesize chemicals. And then their supervisors are now heading these labs that are synthesizing these different chemicals. And if we just allow anyone that has a new function to go out there into the world without testing it adequately first, we'll just end up in a world where there's just a ton of chemicals just everywhere and no one really can even identify. Well, that's where we are now. We know that there are just a bunch of chemicals that are out there that we can't even identify or test for or detect, or we're detecting them and we don't necessarily know what they are. Yeah, so the chemical landscape needs to first be shrunk, and then after something is proven as a safe chemical, we should then only then should it be allowed for use in any product.
For sure, yeah.
I would also like to see less single-use plastics. I think that's something that's really important to me. If we can be less useful of single-use plastics.
Yeah, and actually talking about plastics, microplastics are present in a lot of our cosmetics and stuff, right? So have you done any work or have you explored that in terms of your consumer use projects and whatnot?
No, I haven't. I haven't dabbled into microplastics and how much of that is in our consumer products. But that is a great idea that maybe, if you choose to go into science, that could be one of your projects.
Yeah. But do you have any ongoing or upcoming projects for any of the stuff that you're working on right now?
Yes, I have a few,
Mhm.
to for lack of a better words. But yeah, my projects right now, working on the taking stock study, which
Mhm.
is a study that is focused right now on helping Black women transition from using chemical hair straighteners, essentially. And so we are working with them not only to help them transition to wearing their natural hair, but also swapping out some of those products that, are claimed to help with maintaining natural hair, but may not have the best ingredients in them. So helping them better discernment on like what are um, products with safer ingredients. So that's one of my projects I've shared earlier, how I'm also testing to see what are the chemicals, maybe any chemicals of health concern that might be in synthetic hair. And so just writing that up as well, and also hoping to get funding in the future to continue working with social media influencers so that they can educate their audiences about this problem of toxics that are in our environment and in the products that we use.
Yeah, that's really important. In terms of like what we should do in order to protect ourselves from any sort of toxic chemicals, what would you suggest is best?
Mhm. Yeah, my personal suggestions would be to one, like try to first reduce the amount of products that you use that have fragrance in it. I always start there. Because fragrance is an umbrella term that can account for thousands of chemicals or chemical mixtures. And so getting that off, being more intentional about trying to reduce fragrant use until there is more fragrant transparency is definitely a huge one. I also am a super supporter of, again, trying to stay away from single-use plastics and plastic overall. Microwave popcorn is another one that you want to stay away from because of the PFAS in it, and any Teflon, or some of those black coated, I mean, is the best way to describe it. Pots and pans
Okay.
is another one. Also parabens.
Mhm.
And naturally, if you reduce the amount of fragrant products that you use, you might be, we're finding that it may be that you're able to reduce your phthalate exposure, because usually some phthalates are used in fragrances.
Mhm.
And so, you know, parabens, phthalates, and then there's another category of chemicals called formaldehyde releasers, which, if you're familiar with formaldehydes, they are a known carcinogen, and what these formaldehyde releasers do are slowly release formaldehyde in a product as a preservative, but it also you could be getting exposed to formaldehyde. And so what you'll typically see, and I'll simplify it kind of, if you're looking for a formaldehyde releaser, would be something is DMDM hydantin was one
Mhm.
that's typical, and you might see something that says URA, UREA. So it'll be something URA, and so there's a few of those as well. And I think that's a lot to start. Like, I think that's a lot of steps to start, but I would say start there.
Yeah. And thank you so much for, coming on. It was amazing talking to you, Dr. Franklin. Um, it was great, listening to your valuable insights regarding environmental exposure and uh, women's health and people of color as well. Um, your research obviously not only illuminates critical issues, but also paves way for meaningful change in public health policies and community practices. So, um, to the audience who's watching, we will link the Google Scholar of Dr. Franklin and her podcast and website in the description. So please do check out their work. And thank you so much for watching.